Now let's create our first program, an order entry program. As you can see, there are several folders already in the program's repository. Let's add a new one. We move to Programs and select Create Line. Then we name the folder Order Entry. You can see on the right that there is only one program, the main program, which you will see at the top of every program repository folder. The main program acts as a kind of global program where you can hold functions, variables, and forms that are accessible by all programs. We select Create Line or press F4 to open up a line in the program repository. Now, we could create the program manually, but to give ourselves a head start, we'll select Options Generate Program. This option has many useful features, but in this instance we'll use it to create a program that displays one order header record on screen. We select an option of Browse, since we are going to look at the data rather than import it or print it. We zoom from the main source to select the table, Order Header. We could also zoom from the columns to select only a subset of the columns, but we'll select all of them for now. On the Style tab, we'll select Screen Display, which will show one record at a time. Line Display, on the other hand, would display several records in a table. After we press OK, eDeveloper works for a moment, and then a new program appears. This is our simple Browse program. We'll rename it to Order Entry Program. Before we run a program, it's a good idea to do a syntax check, which you can do by selecting Options, Check Syntax. You will see Program is OK in the lower left part of the screen if it is OK. Otherwise, a list of syntax errors will be displayed. Then, select Debug, Run, or F7 to run the program. A runtime window will open. The Studio window, you will notice, is still open. This is a very useful feature. You can debug a program while viewing the source. Note that we can see one order header at a time. The program opens in query mode, which allows us to view data but not change it. We select Options, Modify Records to go into Modify mode. Now we can use the options on the Edit menu. We can use Edit, Create Line, or F4 to create a record. We can type in the order number, order date, customer code, and so on. Notice that the text formatting has all been implemented based on our models. We can use Page Up and Page Down to move between available records. And we can use Edit, Delete Line, or F3 to delete a record. But this isn't a finished program, so let's do some more. To exit debug mode, we can click on the X, or we can go back to the Studio and click on the red box icon, or select Debug Stop. Stop is very useful, especially if you happen to accidentally create a program with a bug, such as an endless loop. To open the program, again we use Zoom. There are 3 tabs on the program: Data View, Logic, and Forms. In the Data View section are all the variables that are in this task. In this case, we have all the columns in the Order Headers table. Then there is Logic. The Logic section is where you would do programming in the traditional sense, but you will notice there is no logic here. The functionality we just saw, editing fields, saving records, and so on, is built into the eDeveloper engine. When you are using eDeveloper, you don't have to add logic for the ordinary functioning of a program. Last, we have Forms. Forms is where we specify the screen that shows to the user. We can zoom on that, and then we see the form. Here are all the fields we saw when we ran the program. There are also some important sections of the program listed under the Task menu: Task Properties, Expression Rules, I/O Files, Sort, User Events, and so forth. We will be using some of these later in this tutorial. Let's take a look at Task Properties. Task Properties is very important because it controls much of the basic behavior of the task, such as whether it is online or batch, how transactions are processed, whether it runs in parallel, and what the user is allowed to do. For a generated task, the default initial mode is Query. This means the task opens in query mode if data exists, which is why we had to select Options Modify Records before we could work with the table. Since we don't want our program to have this behavior, we set the initial mode to Modify. However, if the data doesn't exist, then the behavior is different. In older versions of eDeveloper, if no records exist, the task will automatically go into Create mode, which is what we want for our order entry program. In newer versions, however, there is a new option, Allow Empty Data View. If this is set to Yes, then instead of going into Create mode when no records are found, the task will open in Query mode with no records showing. Click on the Data tab. If you see Allow Empty Data View, then set it to No. If you do not see it, as is the case here, then you don't need to do anything.